I'm so excited to have today's guest on. She doesn't know this yet, but she has had a huge impact on my own personal motherhood journey. If you're a mom who gets overstimulated, has mom rage, constantly feels guilty for yelling at your kids, feeling like you're not doing the right thing, then this episode is for you. You're not out of the normal. And Erica showed me that that is not just me, and that's not something to feel bad about. That's human, and that is part of the process of being a mom, and that we all feel it. And even her, as a clinical psychologist who specializes in it, feels this way. This is a very common thing, and there's some amazing tips, tricks, and little nuggets of wisdom about parenting, being a mom, and just how to be the best mom for you and your kid as well as your family. So let's dive in. I'm Brittany Lane, your host of the Energize Effect podcast. I was convinced that success, freedom, and happiness weren't for people like me. That if I wasn't born into wealth or didn't have the right connections, I'd never really make it. But after I had my daughter, I started questioning every single belief that told me I wasn't good enough. And what I've learned is that the biggest thing that kept me from my dream life was me. My limiting beliefs ran my life on autopilot until I broke through them. Now I wake up excited with more opportunities and success than I've ever had, and I want you to feel the same. This podcast is no fluff, no filters, just raw, real conversations about breaking through what's holding you back so that you can wake up every day with an energized belief that anything is possible. Let's get into it. I think when you become a mom for the first time, it is crazy. You have no idea what to expect. You have this brand new baby and they're just like, okay, go home. And you're like, what? Like, you trust me with this baby? And of course, being pregnant, I was following all the pregnancy, fashion and baby sparks, what to expect, how big is your baby? But I had no idea what really to expect when I actually had this little baby. And I was the first of my friends to have a baby. We didn't have any family nearby, close to really support us. So it was kind of just me and my partner thrown in this mix and basically winging it. And I remember so many times just feeling so exhausted and defeated. And there was moments where I just felt so angry. I just wanted a moment to myself. And I saw all these girls on Instagram, like, perfect moms, and this is so easy. I love it. Like, they look cute and they're smiling. And I felt so far from that. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I be like that? Like, I must just be a bad mom. I'm not like them. Maybe I'm not meant to do this. And I felt like the more I had that negative self-talk, the worse I felt. And I remember this moment so clearly because I sat down and I opened up my Instagram and this infographic popped up on my screen. And I literally saw it and I felt like a million bricks had been lifted off of my shoulders. And it said overstimulation. And it had all of these little tidbits about what overstimulation was, how it presents. And I was like, an aha moment, like, oh my God, I'm not a bad mom. I'm just overstimulated. So I'm so excited to introduce Erica Djossa. She is the founder of Momwell. She's a registered psychotherapist with a master's degree in clinical psychology who created not only this infographic, but created this amazing site and Instagram at Momwell, and she has dedicated her career to helping moms with maternal mental health. So welcome, Erica. I'm so grateful to have you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing that story. It's so interesting to put things out into the world. And as a creator, I'm sure you know, it just kind of feels like it goes out into like the interwebs and you don't really know who's seeing it and if it is having an impact in that way. So to find you in a moment when you really needed it is so rewarding and exactly why we built this community. So thanks for sharing that.
So Erica, I love to start my podcast off with one thing that you are really proud about yourself or that you love about yourself right now. And then to go into one thing that you're currently working through or struggling with.
So something that I'm really proud about I think about lots of different areas of myself and areas that like proud in work, proud in parenting. I think in parenting, being flexible and open to changes and learning. So we're going through some interesting times with some of our neurodivergent children, which comes out in lots of behavioral challenges and just challenges to me as a parent that I never thought I'd be navigating or facing. And to be a clinician, to be in this space and still be very open-minded to other supports, other perspectives, to me is important because we want to show up and give our kiddos the best skills possible. So I feel like that is sometimes hard and intimidating, but feels good to do. So I'd say I'm proud of that.
That's amazing. And it's so funny parenting. It's like you think you've got it mastered, when you think you got it down, and then you just get thrown one more thing. And, it's like, okay, here we go again. We're learning something new.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then one thing that you're working through right now or struggling with?
I'd say it's probably equally navigating parenting. That's so funny. I feel like it's both the strength and the challenge right now. The thing that is teaching me a lot about myself while also somewhat humbling in the process. And I know I've spoken to a lot of parents of neurodivergent children, or maybe parents that have children with medically complex needs, or you find yourself sometimes in a stage of parenthood where this is just really not what you expected. And we find that in postpartum, but as we grow, there's a sense of like, oh, we're going to get to this place where we arrive and we feel like we've got it all figured out. But sometimes it can feel really isolating and lonely to be facing these challenges that I face, that many of my colleagues face. And so that has been interesting, somewhat blindsiding, a bit of an emotional roller coaster at times. But also, like I said, one of those things that I think is strengthening my bond with my child as we navigate those things together. And he knows that he's loved unconditionally through the process. So yeah, it's kind of like the rose and the thorn in one scenario.
Yeah, the double-edged sword. I think we look at, people we admire and we see, people doing amazing things and we just think, well, they've got it all figured out. They're not struggling with anything. But I appreciate you being so vulnerable and transparent because it just shows that all of us are human. And Erica Djossa at Momwell, who is amazing. I look up to you so much, but to hear that you still are going through things as well, it's just like you be able to build that connection. Like it's okay that we're all going through things. So thank you so much for being so open and transparent with us.
Yeah. And it comes out of my own rough transition to motherhood. Like I had 3 boys in the span of 3.5 years, was a therapist working in children and family practice, and found myself in the throes of postpartum depression and anxiety, which with that came overstimulation and rage and irritability. And thinking to myself, how did I not know that this was a high-risk time? How was I not prepared both by my doctor or by my schooling that I should be on the lookout for this adjustment? And so going through some of those hardships early on, even as a licensed clinician, really opened my eyes to how transformative and challenging this transition to motherhood can be.
Yeah, and to even hear that it's not really something that was taught in school is so interesting because I felt like I never had any idea being a mom. Like I feel like there should be classes or education that this is normal. And all I know about as a mom is like what I know from my parents, but we're breaking those traditions, we're breaking those old patterns because that doesn't really fit into what we're trying to be as parents today. And, I think back then it was like, oh, be quiet to your kids or don't speak and so many things. And we really aren't parenting like that. So I think there is more stimulation. We're trying to be more patient, but being more patient creates more, these deep feelings that come up. And so, yeah.
You're describing a dilemma or like a common feeling that I hear where we are trying to break cycles and like model healthy emotional regulation for our kids, or these, show up for them with this healthy emotional capacity. But at the same time, because we didn't necessarily learn these skills, we weren't taught them growing up, they weren't always modeled for us, we are also learning in tandem with trying to teach and model. And that is a really feels like high pressure, stressful place to be because we so badly don't want to get it wrong. I hear this all the time. I don't want to screw up my kids. I don't want to traumatize them. I don't want to create harm. And so we have so much pressure on ourselves to do it perfectly, or we feel like we need to. And at the same time, we don't give ourselves grace for the fact that we're winging it. We're learning this. There is no real roadmap for this line that we are walking right now. And it's difficult. And there's a lot of information on the internet. There's a lot of conflicting opinions. And so a lot of pressure, I feel like, plays into that as well.
And why do you think that we as parents today are trying so hard to be perfect and be so different? And why do you think it's different from that generation, previous to us?
I think about my mom when she used to go to like play groups or something like that. She would have her immediate circle of parents to observe in how they parented, right? And it was only for snippets and moments of their day. Now we are an audience to so many different creators, people online, friends online, often posting highlight reels, more now talking about the realities of motherhood. But we have this sort of like, little view into lots of different perspectives, cultures, approaches, which can be great because I think that if it is done in a way that it is opening our mindset and sort of allowing us to realize that there are many ways to mother, then it can be helpful. But when we're taking that in as, I should be doing that. And add that to the list. I also need to have, picture perfect moments with curated pajamas where we all are matching and this has to happen and that has to happen. Then it starts to just be an unreasonable amount of expectations that we kind of subconsciously internalize that we now have to live up to. But most of the time we haven't consciously opted in to even wanting to carry those expectations. They're kind of just put on us, or subconsciously we take them on, and they may not even align with how we want to show up in our role at times.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like, I feel like motherhood on its own without social media and that projection is a lot. It's all the daily tasks, the small things that add up. It's overwhelming to begin with. And then to think, add on the matching pajamas and to film it perfectly and get your kids to behave that certain way. It's adding this extra element onto an already, I think it's stressful. Parenting is stressful. It's not for the faint of heart. I feel like we really learn about ourselves through parenthood. And so Erica, when we're feeling this overstimulation, like how does that present in the body? Like how does that show up? What does that look like? What's actually going on in the body?
Yeah. So overstimulation is an overwhelm of our senses. And what's really interesting is like a lot of the things that we have been describing are actually sort of like mental and cognitive things that play on our capacity. So for example, I was doing an exercise with one of my children and he had one of them had the most insightful thought. We were talking about anger and what happens in his body when he gets angry. And one of the things that he said was noises begin to irritate him and really make him mad because he's already angry. So when we have pressure to be perfect, when we are putting pressure on ourselves to perfectly navigate a tantrum. And what we really want to do is throw ourselves on the floor as well and roll around because, this is a lot. And there's all this pressure or anxiety that we feel. We are pulling on our mental capacity. We're pulling on our capacity in that moment. So we have a shorter or lesser tolerance sometimes for the sensory things that go on in our environment. So I would say that's one type of overstimulation where when we are internally at capacity in some way, whether that's stress, whether that is tired, whether that is we just had a conflict with our partner and now we have to, put on a brave face and finish a bedtime routine or whatever. That capacity that we have left now leaves us with little resources to navigate some of the overstimulation pieces. And what that overstimulation is the sensory input that we are taking in. And in parenthood, there is no shortage of it. It's all of the noises, the jumping and moving off the couch, and all of the visual overstimulation of clutter and, kids all over the place wrestling, and it's ninja camp and wrestling in our house 24/7 with 3 boys. And then it is being touched constantly, feeling like we don't have autonomy over our body, or feeling like we're a bit of a utility in those early years. And so all of those pieces lead to a sense of overwhelm or feeling stressed out. And it depends on the person where that sort of stems from, but it's very real, and it activates your nervous system and leads you to either want to lash out and lose our cool because we're at our max, or go hide in a closet and just take some space to ourselves to try to bring it all back down to baseline for a moment.
Yeah. So do you think when we feel that we're just need that moment to ourselves to regulate ourselves, we're so dysregulated that, because I laughed when you said go find a closet, because that's literally still to this day when I feel overstimulated. I go into the bathroom where it's dark, a small room. I turn on water to drown out all the sounds. And it's my safe space. I feel like I can just breathe. And my partner and daughter laugh at me. They're like, oh, mom's in the bathroom again. When I first did that, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just realized now I'm self-soothing and regulating. But my partner, and now she's older, my daughter, so she can laugh about it when she was little, but how do you explain that to your partner or your child, what you're doing? Because I felt like a crazy person. I'm like, she's in the bathroom, what is she doing? So how would we explain that to them without being I'm not crazy, but this is just a way to soothe?
Yeah. Well, first, I think it's important for us to understand that our senses, sight, touch, smell, our hearing, are all tethered and wired into our nervous system. And they are kind of like the surveillance system that's constantly on the lookout for threat and whether our environment is safe or not. And then that fight or flight response coming from our nervous system and our emotions and the sounds and the things that we see all play a role in that wiring. So when my 2 or 3-year-old shrieks at the top of their lungs out of nowhere, that has an impact on my nervous system because I'm trying to understand and process the data that's coming in around me. And when it's all stimulation, all sensory overload all the time, it's taxing for us and for our bodies. So I will even say things to my children, I will cover my ears and say, Mommy's brain cannot hear 3 conversations to me at the same time. It's scrambling Mommy's brain right now. Can we please just take a minute and ask one at a time? Mm-hmm. And just simple things to narrate in a very neutral way what is happening in your body so that they can understand, and it's not coming out later in sort of yelling or snippy or boiling over, because I'm letting you know as I'm feeling it, guys, this is a lot. Mommy's brain can't take this all in right now. And some days I find the rush home from school, they all have things they want to report to me from their day at the same time. And I tell them, I really want to hear what you have to say, but I can't do it when you're also hanging up your backpack and your brother is also talking to me. Can we transition into the house and then let's sit down and tell me about it? So also setting some boundaries or letting our children know what we need in that moment can be helpful. Mommy really doesn't want to be touched right now. I actually just had a very stressful meeting at work, or I just need a breather. I'm going to have my tea, I'm going to have a breather, and then come snuggle with me after. And that models for them that we can have those needs, have healthy boundaries, and also that if they feel that way too, they can communicate it back to us in return.
That makes so much sense. And that's teaching them, I feel these good boundaries. My personal upbringing, I was never taught that. It was stuff everything under the rug, everything's good. I don't remember being able to speak up like that. And I guess it's probably how we were raised. But do you think that you said fight or flight, which really actually kicked something in me, because I think I've lived most of my life in fight or flight as a young child. And so do you think people that have lived in fight or flight as children, does that make us more overstimulated as adults, or how does that look?
Yeah. So we all have a sensory threshold, right? What feels comfortable, or we don't want too little stimulation, or we're not really going to get up and do anything. We're going to be really kind of, sloth-like and unmotivated, and we're not going to do a whole lot. But we don't want too much, because then it starts to overwhelm our system and we either lash out or pull away and have a hard time. Now, what that threshold looks like for everybody is different based on our own vulnerability factors and upbringing. So, for example, I have ADHD and I'm neurodivergent. So noises in particular really can be difficult for me, especially if I'm trying to think or focus and it's coming as like an interruption, and it really makes me irritable or puts me on edge. If you have trauma, and there's trauma that is associated with sounds or smells, like we can have triggers in that way. Or I've talked with lots of parents who have gone through different forms of abuse or sexual abuse. And so touch can be very triggering. We have a different tolerance for touch. And so there are many things, whether we're like anxious, whether we had a stressful day, conflict in our relationship, like there are many things that can impact that threshold. So some of us are coming into parenthood already with that threshold being different, but we could have autonomy over regulating it before. I think that's the piece that makes it so difficult. It's like, why does noise drive me crazy now? But before, it didn't really bother me. I'd go sit in Starbucks so I could actually have noise to do my work, right? And it's because now we don't have the same sort of freedom and autonomy over that quiet space and over regulating those senses in the same way, because we are now, whether we're feeding this little babe or we are tucking in at nighttime or we are hearing all the updates from the day at school, we don't get the same breaks anymore. And so that's when we really start to see, when we step into parenthood, like, wow, this is really bothering me now, but it didn't feel like it used to before.
That makes sense. So I always laugh about it because I was like, I always thought I was busy before being a mom. And I was like, when you become a mom, you're like, what was I doing? Like I was watching Netflix. Like I wasn't that busy, but it's so funny how you could pick and choose. You go to Starbucks to hear all the noise, but when you get, it's all the time, you just want some silence for a moment, some more autonomy. How does overstimulation like relate into mom rage? Because I have a dad who was very short fuse, what's like be angry in a moment. And I'm an Aries. So I've always just like told myself that that's just who I am. And so I get to a point where I feel the overstimulation, and I wish I would have known to be able to like talk and say that, because I think that would have really helped. But as this like need to be perfect, just keep going, you got this. But then I hit this point where I like rage. And so what is the correlation between overstimulation and mom rage? Is that something we innately are? Like I thought like my dad raged and I'm an Aries, so that's just me? Or is that connected to the overstimulation?
It really comes back to that fight or flight response. And there's actually like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. We don't need to unpack it all today. But when we're starting to escalate and we might feel like we want to go hide in that closet or like have that urge, that's really the flight. That's like, get me out of this situation. I cannot tolerate this any longer. And then a lot of times parenthood doesn't allow for the escape, doesn't allow for the moment away. And you're up for the fourth time tonight because your baby won't sleep because they're teething or they're sick. Like, we're up, here we are, we're doing this, there's no option. And so I find when we shift into like situations where there is a sense of powerlessness, there is a sense of I've tried everything, it's not working, or I've repeated myself so many times, or we haven't slept and some of those other vulnerability factors are there, then when we can't escape, we go into fight mode. It's like, everybody needs to be quiet, or I've told you this many times, or just get your freaking shoes on and get out the door, you know? And it's not like an inherent part of our personality. It is an emotional reaction. It is an urge that our emotion is telling us to do in the moment. And it's also a clue or a cue to us that we actually didn't catch on or intervene soon enough. I talk in my book about like volcanic rage, eruption, meltdown time. Like if we get to this place, we've actually probably missed several little clues along the way that we are escalating, whether that's in anger or whether that's in overstimulation. And when we don't intervene and when we don't recharge our batteries throughout the day or do something to meet our needs or become curious about what's going on there, then we do end up in this place where we are just sort of bubbling over. It's kind of like you think you take a pop bottle and you shake it and you shake it and you shake it and you shake it. At some point, it's going to explode. But if you realize that it's been shaken and throughout the day, you gradually just relieve a little bit of the pressure in the bottle by just twisting the cap a little bit, just relieving that pressure just a little bit, well, then we can make it through the day a little bit more regulated, you know? Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that it's a major piece that we don't realize that once we're in that place, we're not reining it in. We're melting down, and that we probably should have tried to intervene sooner.
What would be some ways that we could, as moms, like slowly, like you said, ease that bottle? I feel like sometimes if you don't have the help or you don't have that ability to, you know, if your partner works away from home or you don't have someone to help, how could you take little moments in the day to, you know, as you said, like ease that stress on the bottle?
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting because we have a really distorted view of self-care, I think. So we feel like we cannot care for ourselves because we don't have time to go for a massage, or we don't have means to get our nails done and these types of things. Whereas for me, self-care is actually making sure that I eat something before I pick my kids up from school, or I'm going to be cranky. Right? And so it's for them, it's for me. And as somebody who is in meetings all day long and who also has ADHD and is not super in tune with my hunger cues, it's very easy for me to not take care of those needs throughout the day. So self-care looks like a commitment to caring for our own needs while we are taking care of the needs of others. And that is very counterculture and what we're taught. We're taught to martyr ourselves. We're taught to put our children's needs and our family's needs before our own. And that is a recipe for burnout. That is a recipe for overstimulation and rage. And so it looks simply like, what are the needs? Is it getting out for a walk? Can you put the kids in a stroller? Can you get some movement in a way that feels manageable, not stressful? Little things like that.
That guilt, that overwhelm, that was how I felt as a mom. I was like, well, me going to the gym or me going to get nails done or my hair done, it felt selfish. It felt like, well, why are you spending money on that? Like, you could be buying stuff for, you know, the kids or the babies. And like, my daughter has a better wardrobe than I do. It's like, why do we have this self-sacrificing? We think that they have to come before us, or we can't give ourselves that self-care.
We're actually mothering in the era of intensive mothering, it's been called by sociologists. And that means that there are like 4 or 5 core beliefs that are at the center of sort of how society thinks we should mother right now. And those are that we as women, as mothers, should be the primary caregivers of our children. We're best biologically suited to do so. That motherhood should be all-consuming. So I should give all of my time, energy, money, resources, everything to my child. That these needs should come before our own. And that we should be wholly and completely satisfied with this role. And to want something outside of motherhood is to be failing in some way, or to not be maternal enough or something like that. And research has found that the more that people associate or sort of have internalized this ideology, the worse their mental health fares, because it is so like not realistic and so unsustainable to hold these standards that really impact our well-being and our mental health.
Recently, this year has been dedicated to self-care because I'm like checked in with myself and I'm like, why do I feel guilty for going to yoga? Like, I give all day, and like, why can't I take 1 hour of the day to do something that like makes me feel good? And it's been so interesting that my daughter is even recognizing it, and I'm sharing it with her. I'm like, this is because this makes mommy feel good, and then I can be a better mom. And I'm like, I hope that when you're a mom, that shows you that like you have to take care of yourself. And so I'm trying to incorporate these like new ways. Instead of feeling guilty about it, I'm looking at it as like, I'm teaching her that when she becomes a mom, like this is how hopefully she will treat herself.
Yeah, I use this analogy in my book when talking about self-care, where we often hear, oh, like moms need to put themselves first. And when we're so used to martyring ourselves and putting ourselves last, I find that the pendulum swing to put yourself first feels too drastic and uncomfortable. And I'm just proposing, like, what if we actually just pulled up a chair and gave our needs a seat at the table with the rest of our family? So what's good for them is good for us. And it's sort of equal playing field here. So if it's good for my son to have enriching activities that are social and sports, he's moving his body, he's learning about teamwork, he is, making friendships. It's also healthy for me and my social life and my body movement to also have some form of hobby or enriching activity or form of movement in my life as well. And when we start to kind of see that we should be at that table, we start to realize just how much we've neglected ourselves or just how much we have not tended to those needs. Some of them even so very basic. And I don't know, it often feels like a more comfortable place to start when we frame it that way versus put yourself before everybody else. Like that's so counter how we feel and what we've been taught.
When I heard that too, it's like, put yourself first. I'm like, well, I can't. Like, I have a small child that needs me. And so I think the wording, like what you said, is like, why bring us to the table? Like, we deserve that as well. I think that's a better approach because as moms, it's like really are selfless. And to say, yeah, just you ahead doesn't always feel comfortable, but you included. I love that. You've just listened to part 1 of my conversation with Erica from Momwell. Check out part 2 to hear how to navigate mom rage, handle overstimulation with your partner, and not feel bad about watching reality TV because you're not alone. If you also want my cheat sheet for avoiding mom rage, check out the link below in the description and download it free today. It's called the Calm Mom Grounding Cheat Sheet, and it will help you choose connection over control in those tough moments. Also, let me know what you think about the episode in the comments below, and share this episode with the mom friend who needs to hear it. Talk to you soon.